Me and Sophie exited for $1 billion. We could have exited for more. Soon thereafter, the company went up to like $5 billion valuation.
Wow.
There's a lot of your viewers now, and hopefully they're gonna listen to this. You, my brother or sister, you're paying attention, giving focus and energy to all these little areas. That's why nothing's grown in your life. Instead of focusing on creating enterprise value in the friggin' business that you're involved in right now. You've gotta be focused. You've gotta be passionate, over the top. Nothing else matters other than your business. And that's what happened to Bobby and Sophie. That's how we became financially free. The reason most people don't make it, don't start, quit, is because...
Welcome to the JT Foxx Podcast Network. And imagine basically starting a company with $25,000 and end up exiting for billions of dollars. And exiting at a time where you probably could have made more money and dumped all your money into real estate, and now starting the next and latest thing. You may have heard a previous podcast because we had Sophia Castro, and then we have the better half and half. It was so fascinating to interview Sophia, and I strongly recommend you guys go to my past podcast to really dive into, because the authenticity there in the story was remarkable of cohesiveness, non-drama business exits. It was probably positively inspiring, but also what can it achieve. And now we have the great Bobby Castro, also a best-selling author of the book Upsiders. How are you doing, Bobby?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
So we went over the story, and you started sort of this sort of health group, and you sold the company for it was $1 billion valuation. You took $300 million, a third, give or take. And before we kind of get into it, in case people didn't listen to, why did you exit? Because the company, you could have stayed. You're dominating a niche, and then you decide. And by the way, you have a good relationship, because I think you started off with brother-in-laws, right? So family members. So it's not like it was a bad business partnership. So many people are afraid of exiting, or especially this is their baby, not thinking they can get another hit. So what was your thought process?
So my thought process, well, I'm 56 today. When I decided to exit, and I say this with no exaggeration, I know people may think it's a little bit over the top, but I do think, and I truly believe, money amplifies where you're presently at the moment. And I just decided, man, after a long, many years, I mean, the company was about 20 years old. I was in the industry for many years, longer than that. And I had grandchildren. So in business, I want to warn a lot of people, and I think that's why a lot of people don't get into business. There's a tremendous sacrifice. And the sacrifice that I had to make was maybe not to be there on particular football games, cheerleading games, family events. I was building a business. I sacrificed a lot of these moments. Fast forward, I get grandchildren. Ocean, who's 8 years old today, Oakley, who's 5.5. And when they came in my life, I came into this wealth because my wife and I earned it. We worked our tail off for it, man, every minute. And we both sacrificed so much. And when we came into this wealth, it just amplified where we're at, where we had this personal journey called growth. And you hear it a lot on social media and everywhere, but a lot of people really don't understand what personal growth is. It's where you're presently at, what you really desire. So at that moment, I said I wanted to be the best grandfather, or more so, put forth the energy, focus, and energy to show my children how to preserve what we have, how to grow from it. And we opened a family office. It was just ready for me. It's a new chapter. I talk a lot about it in my book. It's constant growth. That journey, that process will take you a number of different areas in your life. So that sums that up.
Do you regret? I don't know if you heard the Shaq interview that he did on with one of the Kelsey brothers, right? Travis's brother. And he said, retire now, enjoy your family, because I had all this money. I was living in a 100,000 square foot home by myself. You talk about missing, which, had Wayne Gretzky just at my event a month and a half ago. And he talked to me about that his family knew that during these 8 months, he had to take that sacrifice. Tom Brady told me 2 weeks ago that he had a horrible last season because his family problems really got into his head, into the game, right? Now that you look back, right? Let's just say $300-400 million net worth you have now. Could you have said, $100 million you and I both know 100 million can buy us whatever we want, right? And we
Yes, sir.
both have a 9-figure net worth. But that's not how we're conditioned, right? I mean, it's not work for us. We love what you do. I'm pretty much sure you're like me, you love the game. And so looking back, instead of where you're at now, would you have like taken your steps like 2, 3 steps back and said, I'm okay, 50, $100 million, but I'm going to go to a lot more games and a lot of that? Or are you happy with the decision you made here today?
I was absolutely happy with the decision I made, over the top obsessed, no regrets whatsoever. I'm grateful for incredible, terrible mistakes I made, the lessons. Um, if there was some sort of a regret, I should have started a little earlier, but I wouldn't have made the mistakes, and the associations I had in life, they were as lost as I was, but I didn't have the internet back then. So I have no regrets, man. Me and Sophie speak about this a lot. We have life coaches. We're constantly being coached by very high qualified individuals to make sure we preserve our wealth, because we're faced with a real reality that Las Vegas has the odds, and chances are the odds are very favorable to their advantage, meaning that, yeah, Sophie and I have enough money for the rest of our life, but our children will blow it and nothing will be for our legacy, our generations forward. And that we're on such high alert about that. But I have no regrets at all. At all. All that sacrifice was so much worth it, because somebody in my family had to make that. Nobody in my family, they were so selfish. They never thought about doing that. And they had excuses for not doing things, or maybe should have opened a business like my father should have, and all that. No regrets at all, man. I'm proud of that younger Bobby.
Now, let me ask you a question. By the way, do you fly private now or do you fly first class commercial?
Private. We've been flying for many years private, only for the time element. It's a mission statement, meaning from point A to point B. So private.
Yeah. So let me ask you, at the point when your children get on a private plane, right, which now to them is second nature. Um, we did the Spirit Airlines, the Southwest, the last row, the board number 9, right? Worrying about what a bag fee would be. Isn't it hard, really, because you're not taking 10 steps back for your lifestyle? So your kids, by nature, they have the big home. To them, this is all expected, the best schools. How does one, in a society where you and I both earned it, where you're trying to teach the next generation, where everything was given to them, and where everyone has an iPhone, where everyone has the best, where, it used to be Christmas, you get toys, and now it's like, hey, you want something on Amazon? You'll get it this afternoon, right? How do you balance that?
So we're governed by a policy, my family, and I say this no exaggeration. And if you meet my children, Priscilla's 33, Brandon's 27, they're both married. They are so humble. You would never know. And I think it's how we actually raise them as leaders. And Sophie and I are very humble. We're very we don't have the flash dance. I talk about that in my book, because I understand that flash dance, all the material things, and your kids pick up on that. If you meet my children, they don't have that. And at least that's me just saying that as a father. So we have outside resources, one being legacy capitals with a plural. They help these families monitor and constantly stay true to being humble, not going crazy, not being raised with a silver spoon. We constantly are on this every quarter. We have a family meeting off site at a retreat. We have monthly family meetings with legacy capitals. They all have personal coaches. We have personal coaches and a family coach, really to stay humble, very vulnerable to life, not take anything for granted. Just because we have X dollars does not mean we blow X dollars. We have a relationship with money. And again, money amplifies where you're at. And I say this to a lot of people, and you see this. There's some folks out there that may have a few dollars, and they're really amplifying where they're at in life. It's either they're working for money or money's working for them. My kids, they're on a mission. We help a lot of charities. We all have roles and responsibilities. My kids do fly commercial, and they do fly private when they come along with mom and dad. They do not fly private on their own. That's for family vacations, or if I'm on a business trip. They're very humble. My kids do take Spirit. My kids do go on the internet. They get the best value for the dollar on their own personal vacations. They live that type of life because that's how we've been really showing them as leaders, not telling them what, but actually showing them actually day by day that.
Bobby, you talk about coaches. In the last 13 years, I've spent over $3 million in coaches. I've had 8. People like George Ross, who was Trump's right-hand man on Celebrity Apprentice Judge, Hugh Hilton, best friends with Jobs and Gates, Mike Slay, who worked at Microsoft and Apple. And a lot of it, I found people not necessarily that had a coaching program. They just had a profound impact on me and didn't even know they were coaches. And I just said, here's a blank check. How much? You tell me. And then I would hold my breath. And I wouldn't be where I am if I was here today. You've mentioned it 3 times already in this short interview as well. And even with a person of high net worth you are, you're still getting that help, while most people take a look at as coaching as a cost, or everybody's a coach now and they haven't accomplished anything per se. So what are your thoughts about why people need a coach? And now it just seems that you're a coach, right? Like everybody's a coach, right? And because the barrier to entry is so low. So talk about those 2 facets.
So that's a real sensitive topic for me. So the little I know, and I'm getting to know more about social media, because when I exited social media, my son recommended, hey, Dad, man, you need to get on here, give some love like you did for that culture that you built. And the more I got closer to social media, this coach thing really is it's unfortunately, there's a lot of coaches I think out there that really don't have the results, outcomes, the true bio, the results to be able to navigate and help somebody. Hey, you may want to look this way. Hey, you may consider not doing this way. They're just not as qualified, and I don't think that's transparency out there. I have benefited from coaches, and I have completely had homicide scenes from coaches. I have come to learn I only attach myself with transparency, somebody that actually has been there, has done it, not just one time, a few times, really consistency, and has a transparency, but more so has a will to really help you. They call mentors. And I had a lot of mentors in my life, ones that have not charged me $1, that has substantial wealth, were just rooting for me just to go this way. So this coaching thing on social media, I would tell one, if you're looking for a coach, number one, good for you. You're humble to say, hey, I just need a little guidance. A coach is not going to give you the lotto ticket and say 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, play the lotto on Tuesday. A coach is going to go ahead and push you a little bit this way, or tell you what you should be considering, or actually have that curiosity start scratching. So I did not benefit from coaches where I really got caught up in the flash dance, meaning that if they're driving a Ferrari or if they have this or that, automatically I would think that, okay, they can give me that yellow brick road. That was not the case. So coaches I have today, I have many coaches, but these are coaches that have a proven track record, have transparency. I'm sorry, my dog's here.
No, it's
Keepa,
good for,
he's always with me
he
now.
loves your book. He's sniffing your book. There must be some good info in that book.
So coaching, so I decided to be, for a moment in time, to help another Bobby, another Sophie, to let them know, you know what, let me just give you a quick story of where my heart is and where these type of mentors you want to link up with. I decided to take on 10 only one-on-one clients. And I was going to help another Bobby, another Sophie, regardless what business they're in, regardless what level they're in as to revenue. And I was going to do it for free. My son told me, you're crazy, Dad. I was going to do it 90 minutes every other week, plus you have access to me in between. I really want to help. I put it out there in the world. Not one person took advantage of it, which I was completely shocked, but I understand.
When you don't pay, you don't appreciate.
Then I put the $10,000 price tag a month on it, and all of a sudden I had abundance of applications. And then I interviewed each one to make sure they were coachable. Forget about the fact that you can pay me $10,000. It's not what I'm doing it for. And some people will say, well, then why are you charging? Well, I tried not to charge and nobody showed up. So coaching is a very sensitive topic. I get a bit hot on that topic because I do think people out there have no idea that your role and responsibility, that you can actually do major damage to somebody by advising them and maybe insinuating you have this magic, and you really don't. No one has that magic. All you could do is push somebody in the right direction and make sure they make that decision to go that direction.
Well, on the other side, though, I'm one of the highest paid one, if not the highest paid one in business. And I have a superpower. Number one, I could take a look at people and know whether they're going to make it or not. Body language, eye contact, eye movement, tonality of voice, and also how people speak. Like the way you speak, you could tell you've done it, gone through life experiences, right? And often, if you take a look at some people, they sound bites. I told you a celebrity right before I started, right? Like the guy person's huge, right? And didn't know anything about business. They were very good at what they do, but not in business. But there's this assumption to that as well. But for me at this stage for coaching, it's more like it's to make, I know the answer. I just need certainty. It's like driving a race car and I know what it is. I just want 100% certainty because 1% doubt can get me into an accident, right? And
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but my problems at this stage is this idea of people, right? Who's taking advantage of you, who's not, who doesn't say, you and I have a very high net worth. And you ever notice that like people that don't have our net worth, they overpromise. And then
Yep.
when it doesn't work out, they blame everyone. They blame the
Yep.
market, they blame interest rates, they blame the person, and they never say it's my fault. And I have learned that if it's meant to be, it's up to me. Like I'm 100% responsible, even if it's not. And that's the
Absolutely.
frustrating part because you want to open your heart to people because you want to help. I want to help. It just the worst thing is when people take advantage of the situation. And
Yes.
so, how do you deal with people, new relationships? Hypothetically, you and I become friends. We're not friends. Your wife and I spoken quite a few times, and you have this new person that's phenomenal. That's on the outside. How do you know, or how do you let people in? And what's the premise, or is your circle tight?
So my circle is tight. And one thing I want to touch on the coach again. So say, for example, you're looking to increase and create high net worth. It baffles me how some people are getting coached by individuals that don't even have a net worth, but they do have a Ferrari. It just boggles my mind. So if you're one of those people and you listen to this podcast, you should really check out JT because he has a track record. Individuals, but be careful on that. But I do have a small circle, and I like to call this an invite. So relationship building. And I am a founding member, 5 founding members of R360, 114 members, about $50 billion in personal net worth. These are only individuals. And we like to build relationships with each other, and we wait for the invite. The invite means, hey, what are you doing, man? Can I get in on that deal? Or how can I? That's an invite when you nurture, fertilize, and you can really tell the integrity of a relationship. See, a lot of people come to me ever since I've been on social media, and I have learned my lesson. I've invested for some folks on social media. Terrible mistake, and I blame myself on it. I should have known better. I seen it in my
Can you give us an example? I want to hear about your
uh,
problems. Your problems will make me feel better about mine.
rooting for someone. So, for example, a young person, I invested $500,000. The individual had everything it took to go to the moon and beyond. But I was really, really skeptical of his distractions,
Give us
skeptical
an
of his
example.
vulnerability.
What was the business? What is the distraction?
Flash dance, the material things, the watch he was wearing really mattered. He needed that. He needed your attention. He needed people to say, "I have a business. I'm doing good," versus realizing
Nobody
how
cares.
great your business is. And if we give it energy and focus, only one thing is guaranteed to happen: it'll friggin' grow. And I was suspicious that he wasn't going to be able to bend and surrender to that. And sure enough, I was right. He wasn't coachable. He wasn't ready. He didn't make the mistakes in life. He unfortunately he could have limited some mistakes if he would have just maybe listened to some folks that really cared, including investors, to maybe, hey, look at this. Had no board of directors, had no strategy, but he was a good jockey, had a potential, but I missed that one. And the reason I missed it, my brother, I was rooting for him. And when you root for somebody, you become very vulnerable and you become very weak at it. But again, I'm a student in life and a learning lesson, even in the 50s, 50 years old, 55, 56, I still learn. So
But
that's
is
a
it
good
because you're too
example.
nice? You come across to me, I'm more of a, you know, like I have alone a lot of business all the world. Like I'm very focused and I walk into the room and they're that's that intensity, which to go back to coaching, it's funny. I had Phil Jackson at my event and he talked about how the most coachable person he's ever had was Michael Jordan and number two was Kobe. right? Like you talked about, like, tell me what to do, or how do I get
Exactly.
better, right? And they have this insane kind of mentality. And so you seem to be super nice, super upbeat, super positive. Are you the person who sees the good in everything, or are you but then you obviously you don't get your net worth without having some
Yeah,
acumen stuff, because you come across like super nice. So I was
you're the
wondering.
only one since I've been on these podcasts that asked if I had a question, that's a question I would ask. I have come to learn that I put myself in a position, in a mindset, and extend this energy to get a lot of yeses. I'm a relationship person. I can have people be drawn to me because I mean no harm, but I do want value, meaning I will give you value as long as I receive value. I have been at some major negotiating tables, substantial amount of money, and I'm happy to say that most of the time I come out pretty darn good, because when it's hard to say no, it's hard to get friction going when you have somebody that's not going to feed you back that friction. I'm pretty good at that, and I can get really, really close to individuals very quickly because I'm feeding off of good PMA, positive mental attitude all day. You just feel it from me, and I get right to the essence of the relationship or the business transaction that we're involved in, versus trying for us, you and I, to size it up for the next 2 weeks. I'm really get closer. So it's been my advantage. And I learned that from being a waiter, dude. I was a waiter
I was a
before I
waiter
started my
too.
business.
I was a waiter too.
You
That there
people
are three or
skills.
four tables was our business, right? Now, but funny, I don't know who I talked to about this. I just had this conversation, but I don't know if you remember, in a restaurant. So I consider my three or four tables as my business, right? And by the way, the wages are nothing, right? So they're $6-7, right? So you make money on your tips. The better you do, and then if they were married, you got to spend more time with them. If you're single, you got to let them go, right? So you had to read your table. And at the end, I would take my tips, and then I would go home, and then I would basically count. I put them in a green lunchbox. I'd count my money. All the other waiters would go out to another bar in a restaurant and blow all the tips they made that night.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And so what did
yeah.
you do with your tips, and what was your philosophy towards that?
So I worked my tail off because it's a little different today. Now they automatically bring your little iPad to the table, and it's 22% there. And even if you try to change it to 18%, it doesn't allow you to change it. Back in the day, I had to really work my tail to give you the best experience. Crossing my fingers, I did a great job to give me 18%, just like my mother. My mother was a waitress all her life. So when I used to wait on tables, I started understanding, like my mom, to have people skills. Whether the guy or the party was a jerk, arrogant, have all these ego, have all this complication, that PMA, that smile came on regardless. I was not going to give bad energy. It's almost like, you've been a waiter. So if you wait on a party and he or they are a jerk, most waiters or waitresses are going to be a jerk too. And all of a sudden now there's friction, no positive outcome. I learned how to really get along with complications. So I did look at it as almost in sales. That was a value account, and I had to maximize it by giving value.
Especially bigger parties, right? Because there'd be an automatic tip included, and people would leave a tip on top because
You
it's the
got it,
corporate
man. A
bill,
lot of
right? And
personalities, a lot of
yeah,
people ordering different foods. You got to please everybody.
right. And then the more they drank, the better the bill came at the end for
You how
the
to upsell. You
upsell.
may
You
want
know
to
what?
try
You had
this.
four waters. You had to, yeah. It was actually a great lesson. And I was a stutterer back then too, so
Oh,
people kind of felt a
wow.
little bit sorry. Yeah, I had a speech impediment from 18 from 8 to 24. Really, really bad like that. So,
Wow.
and a French Canadian accent too. Actually, funny enough, the first advice I ever got from my coach, right? And you talk about the truth, and he goes to me, you know what? You need to get rid of your French Canadian accent. I'm like, why? He goes, because who does what you do talks like you do. I'm like, but that's who I am. He goes, yes, broke. Right. And he goes, name me one person, JT, that speaks like you do in the business world. And like an idiot, I said, Celine Dion. And then he just kind of like, he goes, unless you could sing the power of love, I don't think it's going to work. And so I got a voice dialect coach. I think it was like
Wow.
$12, took 68 hours, and I got rid of it because is right. There's nobody on big stages. There's nobody like in the business world that talks like that. And if if you can have Adele, speak British,
Wow.
but then sing in English, right? Saying it's a skill. And it was like my commitment to how bad I want to succeed. And
You're a coachable, man. Your intention
I
was,
actually,
I want to fix this.
the first 3 years, I wasn't coachable. Actually, I wasn't coachable after I made my first million at 24 because I thought I knew it all, right? And then I got 28 at $10 million. I'd done real estate investing at $10 million in the bank. And I'm the only one in the world who's ever recorded every coaching session I've ever done with my coaches. And then eventually I distributed it to my clients so they could see.
Wow.
And I kept arguing. And one day my coach, it was George Ross, said, JT, if you know so much, why am I wasting my time? I mean, you know everything. You know what I mean? You know everything. And at the time he says, you're just like Donald in 91, right? This is before Trump became president. You know everything. And the whole world came down. And he was left in a boardroom like the one below, background here, with banks trying to save his entire empire. So you know everything. My business started going down a little bit at that point because of ego. And I remember this. He says, do you want to be right or do you want to get it right? And I never forgot those words. And
I love that.
I came to him and I said, just tell me what to do. And then I became the most coachable person because when you have no money, when you have negative 34,000 and you make money, you start thinking, and I think I did a video that went viral. It's like when I made my first million, I would then tell everybody, look, who didn't believe me? I'm a millionaire. And they're like, so what? And then when I actually then went to everyone who had more money than me, like, so what? I made it, less than you were. So who cares, right? And the people who didn't believe in me, making money and being successful wasn't going to change their mind.
Incredible,
right?
man.
They just said I was lucky, right? And so I kept trying to get appreciation and love from people that were never going to love me no matter what. Right. And so for you, how was it when you made, especially when you started with like nothing and no money, borrowing money from your
Dude,
parents?
you and I have so much in common. I talk a lot about it in my book. I use something called, I say something that means a lot to me. Ego is not your amigo. Never be the smartest person. I have delayed so much in my life, but I am grateful because I've made a lot of mistakes, which obviously comes with the holy grail, the lessons. I used to be that profile a lot. I call that as a flash dancer, flexing. I know it all. I mean, I even speak to people today, and they're saying, "Oh no, but we're already doing that." It's like what you say. Well, why are we even talking? Because I can't give you any value, man. I mean, how
Especially
come
a guy like you, by the way, who sold at the top of $1 billion company. By the way, you know how many companies in the world actually ever reach $1 billion valuation? I mean, less than 2,000 businesses, right? So you're talking about a small finite amount, and you did it, and
And
then
from nothing,
from
JT, from
nothing,
nothing,
right?
dude. From
You know what?
$1,700 I started here. That was not our money. It was Sophie's mother, my mother-in-law's money. I was living at their friggin' house that she pulled it out of her bra back in the day. That's where they had the beeper, 100 keys to 100 doors. And she told me in Spanish, here. And that took us in this industry. That led us to start a company. No bank lines, no nothing. We had bad credit. We had the same story a lot of people have out there. The only difference we did, we were so friggin' focused, efficient, and effective. Something I have trademarked, non-refundable minutes. You never get them back. I used to burn them. I used to spend them. I used to give them away. And then everything took off in a great way in my life, including my marriage of 33 years. I started investing my minutes. Who with, where, how,
Wow.
and everything starts tightening up in your life. And what happens? You become very focused. What happens? You have clarity.
Wow, that's a good one. Non-refundable minutes.
You never get them back, ever, ever.
Yeah, even being on a podcast, you and I both know that a lot of us people want to have their show, and then we realize like there's only, like an hour of our time is extremely expensive, extremely valuable.
I mean, think about it. If I'm a user and I'm looking at your social media versus a social media that's popping bottles and acting silly and flexing, where am I getting value? I'd rather invest my non-refundable minutes on your content that's going to impact my life and actually move the needle versus getting stimulated watching somebody crank a joke on somebody.
Yeah, and the point is when you made your first million, how old were you, and how did you feel at that point? Because it looks like you never stopped, right, to get to where you are, which you see sometimes one hit wonders, right? And I guess music is kind of hard to get there, but there are people like to put this in context. When I made my first million, I think I realized by accident, by the way, when I focused on the money, the money never came. And then one day I go to the bank, I put my head down, it's that or going broke. I got $1.25 million in my bank. Like I'm shocked. I didn't even know because the bank manager let me know because I didn't worry about it. They were just direct depositing it from closing. And I told my coach, I wanted to buy a house. I wanted to buy this. I wanted to buy that. And he goes, absolutely not. He says, you're going to put $1 million away and you're going to put it into another bank and you're going to start over. And he goes, you're going to act like that because the idea is your fear is always going broke again. So no matter what, you'll go completely broke. You'll always have $1 million. So your starting point is $1 million, right? And then he goes, I said, well, I want to buy a Rolex. He goes, okay, you can buy a Rolex. If you're smart, you won't. But if you want, spend $25,000 on a Rolex. And I go, what about the other 225? He goes, I have a coaching program for that. So I did not buy the Rolex. I bought the coaching program, and that ultimately led me to making way more money because of the coaching. So to me, that first million, I decided to double down. Where a lot of people, it's like they have momentum, and then they just want to spoil themselves and reward themselves, which with the McGregor situation right now, Dana White talking about, he's got a lot of money. You don't have the fire and the energy. So how was it when you made your first million? What went through your head?
So and so just by your questions, I know you've been there and done that, and I love this podcast. So I actually, for quite some time, for a long time, I never had $1 million in the bank, Sophie and I, that I can recall for a long time because we kept reinvesting the money into our business. I always say the best investment is do not stop feeding this business. And then I didn't realize it creates enterprise value. It's worth something now. It's just not a job.
Did you ever go say, hey, our company's worth 10 million, 5 million? Did you see that? Or until you
No,
check?
I didn't even understand multiples. I would be, if I met
knew
you
nothing about EBITDA or anything.
Nothing. If I met you at the bar and you told me my business was worth nothing and I'm making $500,000, I would tell you, you're out of your mind, man. It's worth X. I had no clue, like a lot of people didn't have any clue. Matter of fact, I didn't have a clue up to the time somebody actually knocked on the door, means send an email or some sort of form of a communication. Hey, for all cash, we want to invest and buy 30% of your company based on a $250 million valuation and go ahead and wire off $75 million. I had no clue of multiples back then.
Did you
that
turn it
just
down?
shows you how much you can learn in life. It never stops.
Did you turn it down?
No, we said yes, like a bunch of idiots. We said yes because we didn't know what the hell we're doing. So we said yes. The thing closed so quick, super quick. Wow. Then you start getting curious. Now, my wife, when the money came in, JT, my wife was extremely emotional, very emotional, because she felt bad for her family. She had a different reaction than I did. I was not even affected when the money hit the account.
How much
I
hit
was
your
more
account?
tens of millions of dollars. I mean, it just $75 million hit the account and we spread it out to three people. 25 million bucks. 25 million. I was not fixated on that. I didn't care less. I was more fixated on, wow, did that happen quick? Long story short, understanding, then I got into another chapter of my life to understand, okay, what did I miss? What did we miss here? We found out, based on due diligence, we could have sold it far more than $250 million. And it was a big, sophisticated institution, financial institution, publicly traded, very sophisticated. Good for them. Now I know. Now I start saying,
what was the EBITDA of the business when you saw 75?
It was probably maybe, in my opinion, half than where it should have been. It was probably maybe 5 when it should have been 10.
Right.
Something
so
like that.
In theory, and what was your revenue at that time when they took a piece of Sunny?
This was quite some time ago. I mean, that company, I'll probably have to get back to you. I mean, it's all public records. Yeah. It was so they
saw a good deal and
if I thought it should have been 400 million, it was probably maybe 35, 40 million bucks. We were just building a business. And I just want to touch on this for a moment. There was a moment, my brother, there was a moment in Bobby's life where I had this business that I did not understand. I just thought it was a job. Bunch of people kept talking about real estate to me. We get fixated on real estate. Everybody was doing real estate. Meanwhile, we have this business that was just humming along like a lot of business owners there. We get distracted. We go here. We go ahead and buy a bunch of apartment buildings that we were going to go ahead and kick everyone out, convert them into condos, and do condo conversion. We bought millions of dollars worth of apartments. We personally signed and we corporately signed the company.
Wow.
Well, we didn't know what we were doing. Markets turned, this and that. Now we're interviewing bankruptcy attorneys.
What year was
Now we're
that?
this was
08, 09?
05.
05. Oh,
Or,
wow. This is even before the
or like
crash.
right after, like that was like, let's just call it 07. I'm just
Well,
guessing.
the crash happened in 08. So,
Well, things had, but we went through hurricanes. We went through some stuff. It was
right.
right before 08.
So you took that 25 million and started buying some real estate, and then you find out because you didn't have that
Oh,
expertise.
no, this is before.
Oh,
No,
this is even before.
check
Wow.
this out. This is great. So we're now determining which bankruptcy attorney we're going to go with. To run from the issue, we run only one direction, back to our business. It was the only place to go. We had all these banks, all these, it was a nightmare. And then this is where something changed my life. What you focus and what you give energy to, Bobby, it grows. We started focusing on the business, not for the intentions to grow it, just to ignore this. Well, guess what happened? It started growing.
Give us an example. Give me a specific example. What you realize, I need to bam, laser focus. What's that laser focus? What are you doing?
Only the business. No
Like
real
what?
estate,
Like
no
so
nothing.
now you're not doing any other types of distractions, and then are you doing something different you weren't doing in the business, or you're just putting more energy in the business?
We were giving it like you give your baby. We were taking care of the friggin' baby. Just like when your baby cries, it's constipated. We were finally giving this incredible business, this small business, attention. And as soon as we started feeding it, it started growing. Fast forward, maybe 3 years later, 4 years later, I don't even know how many years. It's in my book, or we can find out the information. We get a knock on the door about this 250. We take it. The only reason we sold it for 250, we gave it energy. Down the road, somebody says, okay, I want to buy it. Before that wasn't the case. When they bought it for 30%, JT, they bought it for this value add. We were working on the business here, but they were looking here. I didn't understand what the markets were looking at of increased enterprise value. I was like your typical business owner doing this when I should have been focusing in this area of the business, what the market really wants to pay for it, and how you really grow your business. They had a first right refusal, meaning if you want to take more off the table, guys, we have the first right to match it or beat it. Well, we went back 11 months later. 11 months later. Hey, we're going to take 19% off. Remember, we sold 30. We kept 70. Now we're going to take 19, meaning we're going to still control and own 51. But we're going to take 19 more. We're going to take it. Yes, we love it. We love you guys. We love you too. But it's 600 million, not 250. They said, what? Because now we understand. We were reborn. Issues reinvent ourselves if you pay attention to it. We took it in 11 months later from 250 million to 600 million. And of course, tremendous focus in there. I'm talking about focus when there's no sex with your wife. I'm just exaggerating. There's no time to even go to the bathroom. There's not time to go to the shower. It was all in. Extreme, effective, efficient focus. We started really improving the skill set of our entire staff, getting the right people on the seat, getting the right qualified people on the seat, and started scaling our business. And then it took off from there. And then me and Sophie exited for $1 billion. We could have exited for more. There was a lot of probably the top 5 institutions bidding on the deal. But anyway, Sophie and I wind up doing our deal. And I don't regret that. Soon thereafter, the company went up to like $5 billion valuation,
Wow.
which I knew. I wasn't surprised because that's now we're on to something. But again, my journey and my life was transitioning and growing in other areas. The story just continues on, but it showed. But the point I'm trying to make, and I'm getting radical here, there's a lot of your viewers now, and hopefully they're going to listen to this. You, my brother or sister, you're paying attention, giving focus and energy to all these little areas. That's why nothing's grown in your life. Instead of focusing on creating enterprise value in the friggin' business that you're involved in right now. I see so many jockeys that have, like that young kid that I invested in, that was a homicide scene. I seen his enterprise value. And I said, if I can get this kid at least a little focused here, this thing could take off. You've got to be focused. You've got to be passionate, over the top. Nothing else matters other than your business. And that's what happened to Bobby and Sophie. That's how we became financially free. But it does not stop. Before we sold that first slice for 250 million, 600 million, and then eventually $1 billion, we started investing our money mindfully. I started burning my money on watches and stupid things like that. I started investing in real estate, and today we have about $750 million, no investors, all our money. Gives me and my family $500,000 plus every single month just on that one stream of income. That would not be the case if I didn't start investing a long time ago with my money. That's why I never had $1 million in the account. I kept investing it.
Yeah, that is a very good point. Let me ask you. So you bought a real estate before 2019, which obviously,
Yes, sir. Oh yeah, yeah, for years.
yeah,
It's been going on for a long
obviously
time.
now it's different. And you saw a lot of people during the pandemic buy properties at 3.25 caps, 3.5, maybe 4. Interest rates have gone up. And I feel that a lot of people have used other people's money and really don't treat it like their own, and are more interested in acquisition fee, disposition fees, exit fees, management fees, or then, oh, look, we're making this cash flow, but they defer the management fees for 10 years. And then when they sell the property, they're just going to recoup a big check, which ultimately they're the ones who are going to make more money than investors. How do you see the market now the way it is in terms of deals, right? It's kind of been a lockdown. Last year was probably the lowest year in deals I think I've ever seen since I've started. Even in horrible times, there's always great deals. It just feels like it's a game of chicken right now. How do you see the market right now?
There's so much distress out there. You have no clue of how many deals I'm looking at. And of course, I haven't striked at any of them. So much distress out there. There's going to be so many LPs, limited partners, taking it on the chin, and it's their fault. And I'll tell you why these limited partners, it's their fault. If I'm an LP, a limited partner, I literally have thousands of choices who to invest with. An LP should know the game. An LP should know the fundamentals of real estate, what they're looking for, what's called their investment theses. Again, I'm going to pick on the Ferrari guy. Just because he's driving a Ferrari, all these LPs gave him or her or them money.
Or planes or helicopters and mansions. And by the way, they're paying for that.
You better. So it's the LP's fault. If you're an LP and you want to get into real estate, you want to invest with people, before you put your money to work with somebody or even put it to work for yourself, understand real estate. Remember, we talked about investing your time. You should know really a lot about real estate. Then you can distinguish what fund or who to invest with. I always said real estate's on the buy. Remember, I almost filed bankruptcy because of real estate. I learned a lesson. I made a mistake. Real estate's on the buy. We have such a low leverage point that there are a lot of people went out there with these floaters. And these floaters are going to actually rock them. They're being rocked right now as we speak. Billions and billions of dollars are going back to the bank. You will see it. It's happening now behind the curtain.
And it's not like it was in 08, because there's a lot of private equity sitting on trillions of dollars. Not like 08 where there's no capital. It's a bit different now, right?
So this is where I feel, and we invest money, guys. This is just not a guess. We actually invest money into data, our family office. There's a supply issue here. In 03, 04, a total of give or take 1.1 million units, multifamily, new products hit the market. That's a lot of supply, meaning that rent growth is like this, meaning that there's no buildups, there's no ground ups. Debt is so expensive, but there's some good news here for the ones I want to pay attention to. That's all going to change mid-26, later 25, because when the supply gets eaten up and debt comes down, which you will see this debt come down, the U.S. government has trillions of dollars that has to be refied, and they're not refining sub 2 to go to 8 or 9. I have deals, me and my wife, at 2.75. These are institutional graded assets. All our stuff is on fixed, very low leverage, but that's how real estate is. It's not speculation. There's a lot of people that bought thinking that it was never going to stop, like I didn't think. And it was just unsustainable. And you're buying a rate cap of 3 cap, and you're borrowing at 4.5, something's wrong.
Not only that too, but now they're at and then they got in Florida, and what they may not know, insurance rates quadrupled in some cases, right? So they quadruple, not expected. Then you have banks now who are actually saying, hey, you want to refi? No problem. You have 30% equity, bring 15% to the table. So now you got to go back to your LPs and say, hey, we need a cash call. They don't have it because maybe they're stuck in other bad investment. So it is a perfect storm, a perfect storm. And I think there's a lot of lessons there that to be. Let me ask you a question. Do you think a lot of these things are going back to the bank non-recourse? Means that banks gave money, no recourse coming in. Do you think that banks will no longer do non-recourse anymore? Because at the end of the day, a lot of these promoters, they have nothing to lose. Yeah, they have the investors that lost money, but in today's internet, you can go to jail, come back, reinvent yourself. Everybody's famous, move to another country, move to Dubai, and then reinvent yourself. Do you think that they're going to do away with non-recourse? For those who non-recourses is that you are not responsible if the property kind of falls, the bank takes the property over. Do you think the
Yeah, so
banks are
I
going to do?
think I think the non-recourse is here to stay, and I'll tell you why. So they have bad boy carve-outs, meaning that there's no personal guarantee trigger, there's no personal recourse unless there's some bad boy stuff in there, misrepresentation of fraudulent financials, occupancy, etc. So back in '05, there was no non-recourse. '08 took it in a bath. As long as the qualified sponsor, because how you get not the lenders have learned a lesson here. When you get a loan, for the ones that don't know this, when you see all the individuals like myself getting significant loan amounts, and by the way, I want to let you know the insurance, you're 100% right, JT. I'm seeing it in my own portfolio, skyrocketed. I'm seeing rents plateaued. Anyone telling you differently, they're lying to you. You're talking to someone that has give or take 2,500 units. There's no rent growth in my portfolio. Insurance is sky high. So FYI, be careful. Do not, you better understand who you're dealing with. So long, and I don't raise money, so I'm not looking for any investors. I'm just throwing that out there. Going back to your, it will be non-recourse. So we're going to go through this new cycle that qualified sponsors. Lenders have loosened it up, meaning that if you're going to go ahead and get a $50 million loan, your net worth, bona fide net worth, has to be minimum $50 million. They loosened that up. And there's a lot of people, a lot of these young syndicators were getting loans after loans and loans, and it was just a lot of people were just overlooking what the policy should have been. I think non-recourse will stay here for the strong sponsors, and they're just going to stick to the guns like they should be. Now, your net worth has to be X, and your qualification and experience has to be X.
So I personally invested over 56 million of my own money into random people over since the start of COVID, and I never lost money in any deal. And I lost money in 5 on 6 deals. I invested in people who didn't have any money.
Yeah.
And I gave them the shot. Here's the money. I funded 100%, and 5 of the 6 lost money, and 4 of the 5 abandoned the project. And they kept saying, "Well, why am I going to do? I'm not making any money." I'm like, "But it's your deal." It's like, and there's this kind of notion, and I hate to say it, and not that I've changed my view, but hypothetically, if I'm going to do a deal with Bobby, Bobby's got money, I got money. If something happens, he's not going to have any excuse. You can always write the check. I can always write the check. And I remember someone said to me, first time I drove a Ferrari, I'd never driven because I'm not into that stuff. It doesn't do it for me. And I get into the Ferrari, I'm driving it, and then there's a bunch of other people and say, "Hey, how come we drive it?" And it's like, "Well, if you crash it, can you afford it to buy me a new one?" And he goes, "No." Then, well, why is JT? Because JT can afford 10 of them. So right. And so there was that notion of like, when you don't, like, I was taught from day one, always treat other people's money more conservative than your own. You could lose your own money, but other people. How do you deal? I mean, you talked about losing $500,000, which, you may say, well, you have a high net worth. 500,000 is still a lot of money because you think about all the things you could have done.
Sure is.
Hell, better go to a charity and make a difference, right? How did you deal with loss? And I know they're life lessons, but deep down, does it bother you? Is it just eat you alive? Because I don't think there's anything such as perfect, which I thought I was, right? And I let my guard down, right? And so I trusted people to do what I would have done, the right thing.
Am I bothered
Bobby,
by
it wasn't their fault, by the way. It was none of their fault.
Yep.
Interest rates, market, blah, blah, blah.
Yep. I'm definitely bothered by my mistakes, but I know chances are it's the most profitable mistake as long as Bobby does not repeat them. That is a magic, not repeating them. So I sometimes I repeat my mistakes once or twice, and I'm saying, man, dude, every time you do this, and it's catching it and not allowing it to continue. That is the hardest thing for me back in the day. I kept just repeating the things over and over, getting the same damn outcome. So, yes, does it bother me? Absolutely. Do I blame everything on me? Absolutely. It's my fault. That's why I like to tell people, the same individuals that got you from A or helped you, or you think they helped you from A to B, are necessarily not the same people from B to C. And that's the same thing with the Bobby. The Bobby that invested that 500,000 is not the Bobby today, as long as Bobby learned his lesson, not to break that
A
policy.
wise man learns from his mistakes, while a genius learns from other people's mistakes.
Yep,
I mean,
1,000%.
so last question: why do you think most people not make it? You've worked with some people, you've done business with some people. In your opinion,
Yeah.
Because I think success is not easy, but I think when you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, and you focus, you talked about it too. So when you now see it and talk to so many people, what's the difference? Why don't
I'm
they?
going to say, and everything I talk about is just based on my personal experience of my journey, because there were so many Bobbies in my life, and there'll be many Bobbies going forward as long as I am grateful enough to still be physically here. And I'm convinced of this. There's no one that can convince me differently. And this is the advice I'm going to give another Bobby, another Sophie out there. The reason most people don't make it, don't start, quit, or whatever, is because they look at JT, you and I, and they see what we have created, and then they realize for a moment in time, oh my God, that's a tremendous amount of sacrifice, and I don't know if I'm willing to risk it all. And then they quit on you or quit on themselves, then they never start because that example, because they're comparing our stage to their stage. Now, the other ones that have a business, and let's just say one that has revenue of $5 million a year, and why one won't scale that to $50 million a year is because one gets distracted, like Bobby did. You will get distracted of scaling this business by paying attention to JT or Bobby, what we have today, and thinking you're going to get that next month, and you're going to completely annihilate that company, annihilate your growth. I am saying that based on my personal experience, and I have a lot of conviction of that because I know that side of the fence. That's why I quit. That's why I never scaled things in life. I was always comparing you, JT, to the stage where I'm at, instead of winning right here, JT, winning right here.
Yeah.
And winning here, stages, it's remedial, because anything that's big, I don't care who you look at JT, you look at a Bobby, you look at a Grant Cardone, you look at whatever profile you're into. Remember this, don't let anyone lie to you. Anything that's big started small. It always has to start small. A lot of people want to go big and start big. That's why they don't create nothing, man. Wealth is creating that long-term outlooks, man.
Absolutely true. By the way, you can go to bobbycastro.com. You can pick up his book, Upsiders. You can check him out. You can also revisit the interview I did, if you scroll down, of his wife, which talked more in detail about their newest business venture. I didn't want to do the same interview. What was the point of doing the same interview? But you should go back about what they're working on there too. And I think they both had a same perspective, but a very different path of thinking, and based on their personalities, which I found it very, very, very interesting. And I think, talking to you, I should have asked her other questions. I wish I had asked her after talking to you, because it's been a fascinating interview. Last thing, what's your favorite quote and why?
So my favorite quote is non-refundable minutes, and it's obviously why you don't get them back. Time is the most precious asset there is, and you have a choice of how you give that energy and focus to. And one thing I would love to sneak in, if I can, just again rooting for that Bobby and that Sophie out there. If you want to start winning at the level you're at, I don't care what you're at. If you're 100 million, 10 million, you're wearing a Rolex, no Rolex, I don't care. There's something you can get online for free, DISC. It's a personality assessment, DISC. It's a game changer in my life. It'll tell you how you're programmed and wired. If you really dig into it, you understand how you can win quickly, including at home with your girlfriend, boyfriend, wife, your children, your culture, your company. A personality assessment on yourself. And I beg you, don't disagree with the results when you get it. 99.999% true. It's accurate. Lean into that data, and that's starting to win really well. But you got to be very vulnerable to understand that, okay, this is my weaknesses, this is my strengths. What am I going to focus on? it'll take a lifetime, JT, to improve your weaknesses. I would rather focus on my strengths.
I do say something different though. I say the minute you turn your weakness into your strength, that's when you add 1 0 to your net worth. And the minute you turn your 5 biggest weakness, for example, my biggest weakness, marketing, branding, sales, speaking, and building relationships. They're all my 5 greatest strength, right? So it's like basketball, right? If you're good with your right hand and you can't play with your left, then eventually I will
get some team members to get that all weakness
That's true,
around
but if
you.
you're also, you can't do your left and people know you can't do your left, then there's nothing you can do because I see you coming there as well. And I talk about double down on your strengths, right? Because if you're good at sales, be dominating, and a lot of people are just content. And everybody who says they're good at something, it's funny. Goats don't call themselves goats. I've had Gretzky, Nicholas, Phil Jackson, Tom Brady. Let other people call you the goats, but don't call yourself the goats as well. So fascinating interview. One more thing. Out of all the podcasts, how many podcasts have you done?
Since I sold my company, I would say 35. I'm just throwing it out
so
there.
let's just say out of the 35 podcasts, how would you rate this podcast? There's a point to the listeners who also want to interview. How would you rate this podcast?
Very, extremely high, probably the top 3, only because your questions were really, for me, because I'm all about value, man. Sometimes I'm on these podcasts and it's like, what are we talking about here? I want to give some value out there. And you ask me business related questions. I could tell these were qualified questions coming from somebody who's qualified. I would definitely say the top 3 because you just hit it. You hit on a lot of questions I would have asked if I was a podcaster.
Right. And I think the point to everybody listening here, whether you're building relationships or on a podcast, number one, if you can't ask the same questions over and over, if I had just personally done the same interview I did with his wife, I would have been bored.
Yeah, my story. Bobby, what's your story? Forget about my story. How can we help another Bobby out there? I'm so sick of my story.
I know. I want to make one up too. So fascinating interview. By the way, the question is to people who do a podcast, ask questions you're curious about, not what you think others want. That way it makes it close and personal, and there's a connection as well. And that's why this interview was a home run from 2 people who have done it and who still give back to people. So Bobby, thank you so much for being on the show. I'd like to do another show with you, but we call it like you and I both go with all our business problems.
Let's do it.
And by the way, sometimes you learn more from the adversity.
I am sure I can get value from you. So I would love to take you up on that. We can have a discussions. I can put my crap on the table. JT, man, what's your lens on this, dude? And vice versa. That's where I'm talking about.
And
that's
by the way,
a value
those are
proposition.
great things of value. Like I said, Bobby and I kind of masterminding on ideas. What about this? Did you do this? Do you do this?
Absolutely.
And I think and by the way, I think the world of just interviewing itself, it still has a little bit of runway, but there'll come to a point where you're going to need a different hook. Right. You're going to need a different, but then some people might be intimidated, right? Because, if they're
I love that, what you just said. I would love to mastermind with you, put some of my things on the table, what's going on, because I would love a qualified lens to look at it from 30,000 view, because sometimes we're looking in and we can't really see it.
Yeah. Well, sometimes we're too busy having our own blinders. And like I said, it takes someone on the outside, including me, to see it, to bring you up. And when you meet people like that, you just click. And I would strongly recommend you re-listen to this podcast, not once, not twice, but 3 times, because your brain's like a leaky bucket. Too many people jump from the next thing to next thing to next thing. And it's about taking this information, right? Letting it sink in, making it bulletproof, but also being able to apply it. I said this recently, and it came to me with Tom Brady, right? I was interviewing Tom Brady on stage, and right before I'm giving a talk, and people are like, "Hey, where's Brady?" And I'm thinking, here you are, one of the greatest legends of all time in sports, the guy who sacrificed, who dedicated. And some of you just want to be here like fans. Like, it's like you want to root for Tom Brady. You want to root for your team. How about you root yourself to win?
Absolutely.
Stop rooting for the guy on the TV to say, go, go, go. Root on yourself. But that same energy you put on making sure your team wins, how about bettering your life? Root for yourself.
How am I going to get value from it versus being a fan? What can I pick up of how he won so many years as a person, individual in life?
And some people said to me, JT, you asked too many questions that were not related to football. I'm like, every story about the football has been asked. I want to ask to get inside the mind of what was he said to me, discipline plus commitment plus action equals success, right? And
talk about Tom Brady. I was hanging out with Tim Grover, and he was mentioning how Tom Brady focused on when he was about to get sacked or tackled, he would get almost like in a baby position so he doesn't get injured. You know how some people just tense up and you're about to get sacked, and how the longevity of his health on the field is because right when he's about to get tackled, I don't know the details to it, that he put himself in a vulnerable position where his bones weren't tense. And
The
I don't know if you heard about
pliability.
that.
It's funny because his guru was with him, Alex Guerrero from TB12, right? And I don't know if you remember, but there was a time they were attacking him because he was in the locker room and this and that, and you're doing something unorthodox because Tom was like, hey, he's my guy. And Tom stood up for him. When, because obviously as a public figure, it's just easy to cut people out. And he's like, this is my guy. He is my friend. And without him, I wouldn't be where I am. And we talked about that loyalty, which is really hard to find. And you truly find out how people are, not when things are going well, but
That's
when
right.
you're faced with adversity. And that told me a lot about Tom Brady. And honestly, these are the questions you want to ask too. Like, what was he thinking? Or, how does he, when there's new people in his life, everybody wants something from him. How does he like, and they were great questions. And by the way, I just asked questions. I think I must have asked him like 100 questions.
I love it. You
Because I had
walked
like,
away with so much value.
oh, I was on a the sky. And the problem is that the entourage of
Yeah.
agents and managers like
Yeah.
Fox and
It's
stuff like
tough.
that. It's always different. But I find people like that. They say yes to everything, and then their people say no to everything. So
Yeah.
I guess there has to be a balance. Like Richard Branson's like the nicest guy. His people are so tough.
He's super, super nice. Sophie and I know him personally, hung out with him a couple times privately and at Necker Island.
Me too. Yeah.
Same thing. You got to have those. You got to have your team to help you,
Yeah.
navigate.
But sometimes
Through.
like they don't recognize what's that. And it was funny because I had an opportunity. Like Thomas is so busy, and it come to a point like there's just some people you can meet. Like I'm 100% sure that I will see you again. I'm 100% sure we'll do something together, right? And to me, that'll be more value. That if I got again with Tom Brady, like if it happens in a business course, that's fine. But the guy's pulled into every direction. He's got the announcing.
Yeah.
Like it was like it was in the moment. It was great, but I don't see like if I never saw Tom again, I'd be fine. I'm content.
Yeah.
I met
Exactly.
my hero. I got what I wanted. I got branding that'll last forever. But like, I don't think I could talk to him about, hey, this is what I'm going through, or this is a business idea, or what do you think? Because if it was football, probably, right? Because and so I think you kind of realize that too. But it's great. I mean, you have a gift, and the fact that you want to help people, it's fantastic. We could have done 12 hours and we still could be going.
Man, I have come to learn, and I'll leave you with this. In order to receive, JT, you got to be willing to give. And that's what we did in the company that we sold. And that's how we built when we sold, I don't know, sub 1,000 employees, and just extending value. And in return, you will get value.
Well, there you have it. Bobby Castro, which is our fourth ending, but it just doesn't want to end because it's that good. It's that good. We're out of here. Do me a favor. If you're listening to this podcast, please share it. If you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, but especially on podcasts, we have so many people listen. Share it. Like, comment. By the way, it doesn't cost anything. Share, comment, like. It doesn't.
Yeah, and then also my book here, JT, Upsiders, you get on Amazon. If you don't have the 14 bucks, DM me. I'll send it to you for free if you're struggling that much. Official Bobby Castro, and you don't make money writing books. I wrote this just to give it to another.
I agree with you. Nobody makes money writing books.
And I'm real happy that President Trump was able to take time and sign my book. So I know that's maybe a sensitive topic out there, but
hey, listen,
I am a fan.
I know the dude. So, I mean, his book, The Art of the Deal, if it wasn't for his book, I wouldn't be where I am today. And also his right-hand man at the time, George Ross, who's now 96, was my coach for the past 13 years and quit Trump right before he ran for president and still is with me. And I know the whole family. But, the issue is as soon as he ran for president, it just became like, polarization. And now it becomes, I think now the country's more polarized than ever. It's like, it's crazy how the world works, right? It's just like, if people take a look at what's happening in the United States right now, right? Forget whether you like Trump or not. The fact that we can do that to someone, hit him with something that happened in 1991 with no proof. Hey, listen,
I agree.
Everyone in business always overinflates the value of their assets so they get the loan. And when it comes to paying property tax, they underinflate. That's just the way it is. And to think that Mar-a-Lago is only worth 18 million.
That irritated me. I mean, no one realizes how individual. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, taking that president's job from day one. He's not. it crushed his net worth. It crushed so many things.
Is it worth
No
it though? You
life.
think at the end of the day, you're still number 45 and you
Yeah,
still probably got to be 4 years. So what? You don't have 2 billion, maybe you have 1 billion left. You've been attacked left and right. But to me, it was when they first got into office and they started attacking Ivanka, who I know, right? I've met a few times. She's like super nice, like says everything perfectly. She's like almost the opposite of her dad, right? Really will think and thought out. And people boycotted her brand because her last name was Trump.
wow.
Or and I think it's a world we like, if someone's watching this and you don't like Donald Trump, that's great. That's I respect that. But I always say, like, why don't you like, if you don't like someone because of their personality, then that's completely normal.
Exactly.
But when we start saying like it's racist or he's this or he's that, when it's not true, or people saying, what if I secretly recorded you? What if you, person watching this, I secretly recorded you in a private conversation, you talking, and then we released
Of
it,
course. Yeah.
right? And then maybe
I
the
love it.
school would find out where your kids are or the parents. How would you feel? Of course you wouldn't. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that everyone here sort of lives in a glass house, but
It's
until they
I have to sneak this in, and I promise you we'll end now.
no,
This
no
is like
problem.
our
It's our
sixth
fifth
attempt.
ending. We're good.
Check this out. And I am 100 for 100 batting average on this. When I talk to young people in 20s or 30s years old, and I ask them, and we get into the Trump topic, and because they don't like his personality, but they don't really look at the fundamentals of all we care about is what the policy is. But I asked him, I said, hey, what did your mom and dad do? Oh, they have a plumbing company. This, okay, great. Oh, they had it for many years. Okay. So what if I tell you, and just hear me out, mom and dad, they're going to die like we all are. And let's just say their business is worth $5 million, including some of the real estate holdings and all that. And it's worth 5 million plus. Then 6 months later, after they die, they get a knock on the door and they tell you, Vicky, and your sister, Susie, hey, we're so sorry for your parents' loss, man. They were such great Americans. But unfortunately, you got a $2.5 million tax bill, give or take. What do you mean? Yeah, we value their estate at $5 million with the business. Oh, no, the business is not for sale and the real estate's not for sale. Oh, no, I know, Ricky and Susie, but we think it's worth that. But we want a $2.5 million tax bill called the estate tax. But do not worry, Ricky and Susie. We'll give you 180 days to pay for it. That's what happened to Joe Robbie for the Miami Dolphins. For everyone that wants to get educated about policy here, they had to sell the Miami Dolphins for wholesale to pay off that estate tax.
Wow.
Now, I tell these young people, do you think that's fair? That's not fair. Well, that's what you're voting for. Don't vote for the personality. You have to understand policy. And yes, obviously I'm a Republican. If you're a Democrat, it's cool, but you should be voting for policy, not for a personality, whether you like somebody on American Idol or not.
Yeah. And listen, I tend to be in the middle. I like policies from both, but I don't. I look at the obviously.
But I was just making a point that
right,
the young people have no idea what the policies are.
But no, they don't, because the presidency is always who's more known. There might be great candidates with great policy. Let's just take Vivek. Let's just assume that he has great policy and great ideas. It's not going to matter because he's not branded, right? And
it's just a shame, man.
It's never the right candidate, and obviously. The problem
I don't know what they teach in school. I mean, I only got to the 9th grade, and I've had people work for me from well-known universities with some Mac Daddy degrees, and these kids are coming out not even understanding the basics of estate tax, corporate tax, tax itself.
How about balanced checkbooks, or how about savings and things? I don't think investing or investing in yourself. The problem is the system is broken. Ultimately, and now what's being taught in schools, for example, a lot of the people's opinions. I was in Australia for Australia Day, right? This is the weekend I was with Tom Brady, and so I'm thinking like Independence Day, and there are people in the streets protesting, which the idea is we shouldn't celebrate this because that's when we threw out the Aboriginals, whatever. It's a small minority, but it's allowed. There's like 10,000 people protesting, but it wasn't the issue of like, okay, you're older, your issue, but then people were like waving flags, little children. Like literally, they were wearing, Palestinian flags, and they were saying things, and these kids have no issue. Vice versa, people who had Trump rally with a Trump sign, and we're not, and the kids are influenced by the teachers And the kids are not be made to look at all sides of every opinion.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean? Because they're swayed by their parents.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's where racism comes from. I mean,
Yeah.
being Hispanic, and I know that I was telling your wife where where your last name was Castro, and they were just kind of left Cuba with Fidel Castro. I mean, she told that story. That alone was like, of all names, like you couldn't have had another name, where you had to deal with a lot of stuff. You know, I'm sure people thought you were related at some point.
Yeah, you know, back in the day, you know, I grew up on my mom, Section 8, affordable housing, rent a center, government assistance. But back in the day, you only had it for 6 months and you were cut off. You had to get your act together and go out and get a job or do something like that. And I'll go down a rabbit hole. I love everyone. I don't have any issues if you're a Democrat, independent, or Republican.
Yep.
But are you voting for policy, or you're voting because you don't like
Or do you understand the
personality?
issues? Do you understand the issues?
Because your kids are at risk. This country's at risk. So
yeah,
I'm
but you know what?
I love
That's not going to
everybody,
change.
man.
By the way, that's not going to change, unfortunately.
But for that, we get a ballot and just say blue eyes, blonde hair. We might as well vote for good personality. Don't put anything that's connected to policy to it then.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'll go crazy, but I love being on this podcast.
I'm the same way too. For the 6th time, another round. For the 6th time. But Bobby, thank you for being on the show. Now, hopefully people see the transparency of these discussions. That's what makes it good. And Bobby, officially would like to make an announcement. I went from top 3 to number 1 with this last conversation. I have just self-inflicted myself to the top based on the policies of this podcast. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time. Thanks for being on, Bobby.